When I found a tube of lubricant hidden in my wife's underwear drawer, I knew she was cheating. When I discovered it was with our son-in-law, my world collapsed. She wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a woman willing to kill her husband after nearly 40 years of marriage. They wanted to play games with my life. Fine. What I did to them next made them both scream. Before I tell you exactly what I did, please subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. Stories like this need to be shared to warn others about predators hiding in plain sight. My name is Jim Patterson, and I'm about to tell you how I discovered my wife of 38 years was planning to kill me for my life insurance money. But it wasn't just the betrayal that nearly destroyed me. It was finding out she was doing it with our own daughter's husband. The moment I knew something was wrong came on a Friday afternoon when I found that tube hidden in her drawer. Let me back up. For weeks, my wife had been acting strange. Susan, my 59-year-old wife, who used to greet me at the door after my shifts, suddenly couldn't look me in the eye. She was always on her phone texting someone and hiding the screen when I walked by. She started wearing expensive perfume again, something she hadn't done in years. Then there was Derek, our son-in-law. The 33-year-old landscaper married to our daughter had been showing up at our Tampa home constantly, always with excuses. He needed tools. He wanted to check the sprinkler system. He was worried about our palm tree. But Derek only came when I was supposed to be at work late. That Friday, I came home early with a migraine and found his white pickup truck parked across the street. I walked quietly into our house and heard voices from the kitchen. Her laugh, but different, younger, flirtatious. "You're terrible," I heard her say, followed by that deep chuckle. When I walked in, she jumped up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Derek was leaning against my counter, drinking coffee from my favorite mug, looking perfectly relaxed. "Jim," her voice was too bright. "You're home early?" He flashed his easy smile. "Just checking that irrigation system, Jim. Noticed some brown spots on your lawn." The explanation was reasonable, but something felt wrong. Her flushed cheeks, the way they'd both startled when I appeared. The intimate way they'd been talking. He left quickly, but I caught the look that passed between them. It lasted only a second, but it was loaded with meaning. The kind of look that said they'd continue their conversation later. That night, she was unusually attentive. She made my favorite pot roast and kept asking about my headache. Her kindness should have comforted me, but it felt performative, like she was overcompensating for something. The next morning, she was still asleep when I got up to find my reading glasses. I thought I'd left them on my nightstand, but they weren't there. I quietly opened her dresser drawer, thinking they might have slid over to her side. That's when my fingers brushed against something that didn't belong among her silk underwear. A tube of personal lubricant, expensive, high-end, still in its original packaging. I stared at it in the morning light filtering through our bedroom window. My reading glasses were forgotten. We hadn't been intimate in over 2 years. We'd both accepted it as part of getting older. So why did she have this? And why was it hidden like a guilty secret? I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, my hands trembling. The woman sleeping peacefully beside me, the woman I'd loved for nearly 4 decades, suddenly felt like a complete stranger. And I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The tube was the first crack in the foundation of my life. The next one came a week later when I found the life insurance policy. Not the one we'd had for years, a new one, a massive policy taken out just 3 months earlier, with her as the sole beneficiary. The kind of policy that makes people ask questions when a 61-year-old retired hardware store manager suddenly dies. A coldness settled in my chest, a feeling so heavy I could barely breathe. This wasn't just an affair, this was something darker. I started paying attention. I noticed the subtle changes in my food. My evening coffee tasted slightly bitter sometimes. She'd watch me drink it with an intense focus I'd mistaken for affection. Now I saw it for what it was: anticipation. I began to fake drinking it. I'd take a sip, wait until she left the room, and pour it down the sink. I pretended to feel unwell, to have dizzy spells. Her reaction confirmed everything. There was no genuine concern in her eyes, only a sharp, calculating look quickly masked by a nurse's smile. "Maybe it's your blood pressure, dear. I'll make a doctor's appointment." I never went to that appointment. Instead, I went to a private investigator, a retired cop named Ray. I gave him the basics, the insurance policy, my suspicions. I didn't mention the lubricant. That shame was still too private, too humiliating. 3 days later, Ray called me to his office. His face was grim. "Jim," he said, sliding a folder across the desk, "it's worse than you think." The photographs hit me like physical blows, pictures of her and Derek, not at our house, but at a cheap motel off the highway. Pictures of them holding hands in a grocery store parking lot, acting like a young couple in love. And then, the bank statements. Large regular cash withdrawals from our joint account, all made on days I was working late. Money I'd thought was for her book club and gardening supplies. But the final document, the one that made the room spin, was a printout of text messages. Ray had gotten a warrant citing the suspected poisoning. The messages were between her and Derek. Her: "He's getting weaker. The coffee is working. Won't be long now." Derek: "Good. I can't wait to get you out of that house and get our hands on that money. We'll be in the Bahamas before Jessica even knows her dad is gone." Her: "Patience, my love. A few more weeks. The policy has a 90-day suicide clause. It has to look like natural causes." I vomited into Ray's trash can. My own wife, the mother of my child. Plotting my murder with the man who had vowed to love and protect my daughter. They were talking about my death like it was a business transaction, an inconvenient errand to run. The betrayal was a multi-dimensional beast. It wasn't just my marriage they were destroying, it was my daughter's life too. Jessica, my bright, kind-hearted girl, was living with a monster, completely unaware. How could I tell her? What proof did I have that wouldn't shatter her world and maybe make her not believe me? Ray placed a hand on my shoulder. "We have enough for the police, Jim. The texts, the insurance policy, we can get them on conspiracy." I wiped my mouth, a new feeling burning through the nausea and grief. Rage, pure, undiluted rage. Going to the police would put them in jail, yes, but it would also create a media circus. It would destroy my daughter publicly. It would give them a story to twist. No. The jail was too clean, too simple for what they'd done. They'd played a cruel, deadly game with my life. I looked at Ray. "Not yet," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I have a different idea. I want to give them exactly what they want, and then I want to watch them take it." A plan, dark and precise, began to form in my mind. It started with a trip to the hardware store where I'd worked for 25 years. I didn't need a new tool. I needed a specific, powerful, fast-acting industrial adhesive, the kind we use to bond metal. The kind that sets in seconds and is almost impossible to separate. The game was about to change, and I was making the new rules. The plan required perfect timing and a performance worthy of an Oscar. I began my act. I started complaining of constant fatigue, dizzy spells. I'd stumble a little when I walked. I left medical websites about heart conditions open on the computer. I let her see me looking at the obituaries in the newspaper with a sad, thoughtful expression. She ate it up. Her care became more rushed, less attentive. She was already moving on in her mind. I saw her packing away small things from our life together in boxes in the garage, labeling them donations. Meanwhile, I tracked their patterns. Derek's truck would appear when I went to my weekly doctor's appointment. I'd drive around the block, park out of sight, and watch through binoculars from a neighbor's vacant lot. They were careless, thinking I was a feeble, dying man. They'd meet in broad daylight. The key was the lubricant. That was their ritual. It was always in her drawer, and according to the text, their motel rendezvous were always on Thursday afternoons. She would take the tube with her. The Wednesday before their next planned meeting, I made my move. I pretended to have a severe episode. I clutched my chest, gasped for breath, and slumped in my armchair. She panicked, but it was the panic of someone whose plan was happening off schedule. "I'm calling an ambulance," she shouted. "No, no hospitals," I wheezed, playing the stubborn old man. "Just my pills, upstairs, and a glass of water." As she rushed to the kitchen, I moved. With speed I didn't know I still had, I was up the stairs and in our bedroom. I pulled the drawer open. There it was, the expensive tube. I pulled the identical-looking tube of industrial adhesive from my pocket. I swapped them, placing the stolen lubricant in my pocket and the glue in her drawer. The entire operation took 12 seconds. I was back in my chair, gasping pathetically, when she returned with the water and my harmless blood pressure pills. I took them, pretending to calm down. "Just need to rest," I whispered. She looked relieved, not for me. For her plan getting back on track. The next day, Thursday, I went through my normal routine. I kissed her goodbye, told her I was going to the library. I drove to the motel instead. Ray was already there in an unmarked car with recording equipment. We had a clear view of the room they always used. My heart was a drum in my throat. This was it. Either my plan would work, or it would backfire horribly. Right on time, Derek's truck pulled in. He got out looking smug. A few minutes later, her car arrived. She got out clutching her purse, a nervous smile on her face. They didn't even look around. They were so confident. They disappeared into the room. Ray and I waited. The minutes ticked by. 5, 10. Then it started. First we heard a raised voice, a male shout, muffled but unmistakably angry. Then a piercing female screamed, not a scream of pleasure, a scream of sheer, unadulterated panic and pain. The door to the motel room burst open. Derek stumbled out onto the walkway, hunched over in a state of pure, panicked undress. He was screaming, hopping on one foot, trying to pull at something with both hands. Then she appeared in the doorway, her face contorted in a mask of horror, also trying desperately to separate herself from him. The industrial adhesive had done its job. Permanently, irreversibly in that moment. They were stuck. Locked together in the most intimate, most horrifying, and most publicly humiliating way possible. Derek was yelling for someone to call 911. She was sobbing, screaming, pulling fruitlessly. Other motel doors opened, people came out, cell phones raised, recording the unbelievable scene. The sounds of their combined agony and shame filled the parking lot. I watched from the car, my breath fogging the window. There was no victory in my heart, no joy. Only a deep, hollow chill. This was the consequence. This was the physical manifestation of their twisted bond, exposed for the world to see. Ray let out a low whistle. "My God, Jim, you really did it." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The final act was about to begin. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights, shocked faces, and sterile hospital corridors. The EMTs and later the doctors were utterly bewildered. They'd never seen anything like it. The media, tipped off anonymously by Ray, had a field day. The story was everywhere. Local couple in freak accident with the salacious details carefully hinted at. Their faces were blurred in the news, but everyone in our community knew. The motel clerk talked. The videos from bystanders spread online. I played the part of the devastated, confused husband. I rushed to the hospital when informed by the police. I stood outside the emergency room, my face a portrait of shock and horror for the cameras. I asked the doctors with tears in my eyes, how could this happen? What was my wife doing there? The doctors, after hours of delicate and painful procedures, finally managed to separate them. The physical damage was significant. The psychological damage was absolute. But my revenge wasn't complete. Physical pain and public shame were only part of it. While they were still sedated in the hospital, I acted. With Ray's evidence, the text messages plotting my murder, the insurance policy, the bank records, I went to the police. Not as a victim of a bizarre accident, but as the target of a murder conspiracy. The detectives were stunned. The accident had already made them persons of interest. My evidence made them criminals. I also went to see my daughter. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. I showed her the evidence, sparing her the most graphic details. I held her as her world dissolved. The husband she loved was a fraud. The mother she adored was a monster. Her grief was volcanic, a storm of betrayal that mirrored my own. When she and Derek were finally discharged from the hospital, walking with excruciating pain and permanent scars, the police were waiting for them in the lobby. They were arrested on the spot, charged with conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. The media was there too. This time, their faces weren't blurred. The trial was swift. The evidence was undeniable. They turned on each other in court, a final fitting betrayal. He claimed it was all her idea. She said he pressured her. The jury saw them for what they were: greedy, heartless, and cruel. She got 25 years, he got 30. They'll be elderly if they ever get out. Their relationship, literally and figuratively glued together by greed and lust, was shattered forever in a prison cell block. I sold the house. The memories in every room were poisoned. My daughter and I moved to a small town up north, trying to rebuild our lives from the ashes. The life insurance money once intended for my murder I donated to a charity for victims of domestic fraud. I didn't want a single penny of it. Sometimes on quiet nights I don't feel like I won. I feel like we all lost. A family was annihilated that day. Trust was incinerated. The woman I loved for 38 years never really existed. She was a phantom, and the real person was a stranger capable of unimaginable darkness. The tube of glue didn't just expose their affair, it exposed their true bonded nature for the entire world to see. It gave them the permanent, painful connection they secretly wanted, and in doing so, it destroyed them completely. The moral of this story isn't about revenge, though I took it. It's about the shadows that can grow in the heart over decades, unnoticed. It's about the fact that the most dangerous predators aren't in dark alleys. Sometimes they're in your kitchen, drinking your coffee, smiling your favorite smile, while slowly, patiently, deciding you're worth more to them dead than alive. And sometimes, the only way to stop them is to hand them exactly what they think they want, and let them choke on it. My name is Jim Patterson. Thank you for listening. Please hug your loved ones tonight, and never be afraid to look in the drawers you're not supposed to. Your life might depend on it.